Hi guys, Colm Kelly here from OTI Media. Welcome to episode 2 of the Learning to Dad show, where I learn a lot of advice from my friends as to what I need to do when I become a parent. So we're into episode 2 and I'm joined by another one of my good friends, and that is Patrick Daugherty. We're going to talk to him about a lot of do's, don'ts, what I need to know, and he has a lot of good advice coming up for me in just a moment. Also, enjoy the show. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Hello there, welcome back to episode 2 of Learning to Dad. My name is Colm Kelly, the host here on the show. Each week I'll take you on my journey as I go towards parenthood for the very first time, and it's going to be a very interesting experience. Really looking forward to it, and we'll see what my guest that I bring on the show here can help me with as I try and get as much advice from my friends that I can to help me become a good parent, a good father, and what I need to know. And today on the show, I'm joined by one of my friends. It is Patrick Daugherty. So Pat's always a lot of fun when I talk to him, so I'm sure this one's going to be an entertaining one. Pat, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm the world's most average dad, so I'm here to give out really average dad advice.
Oh, well, that's going to be a help to me, because I'm not a father at all. So I guess average advice will be a very, very welcome coming my way.
By average, by definition, you're still sub-replacement level since you're not technically a dad yet. Then the second your kid is born, is it a boy or a girl, by the way?
We haven't found out. We're leaving it to be a surprise. So it's
okay,
one thing is for sure. It's either going to be a boy or a girl. It has to be.
That's true. So the second your boy or your girl is born, you will then become an average dad. Yeah, but I guess for now you're not. You can't even earn the average title yet until it's born. So
we're gonna figure all that out as we go. Hopefully we can be above average when we run through it. It is coming up here. It is coming up here in the next couple of days. February 9th to my birthday. I'll be 29 years of age. I mentioned on the first show 28 years old. So that is only going to be for the next couple of days. And in fact, this show will be coming out after that. So it's already not even true anymore. But 29 coming up, and it will be my last birthday as a non-parent. Is that actually a thing, Pat?
That's an interesting concept. You like to think of it. It is kind of like when Jesus was born. It's like BC, before Christ, and then AD. It is definitely like a line of delineation in your life. By the way, 29, a good age to have your first child. That's how old I was when my sweet, precious angel Amelia was born. So, I'd say you already are at average. You're going to be pretty quickly above average. You're going to be a kid at the age of 29. So.
Yeah, so following in the footsteps of Pat here, which is not a bad set of footsteps to be following in. But Pat, I guess we'll fill the listeners in a little bit on your family. First of all, the size of your family. I know that you have one child, one daughter, 21 months old. And then, of course, congratulations to you as well. A second one coming on the way. We had Scott Fish on the show for the first episode. He's just after having his second child. So a little theme going here. You're on the way, but baby number 2 is coming on the 4th of July weekend. So what have you planned for the big 4th of July celebrations over there?
Yeah, that's a good question. Nothing yet. So this family size is currently 3.5, we'll say. You get at least a half if you're inside the womb. You will be whole. This isn't a political podcast, but July 4th, maybe the baby will be a big, fan of the president or something. I don't know. That could create some problems around here, but you got to respect your kids. They got to make their own mistakes in life, make their own. So this is already a terrible joke, but the most patriotic baby in the world. Yeah, that is if they hit their due date. That's probably something people have already told you a bunch of times. Is the due date is really just like a suggestion from the doctor. Our first baby, she's like a nice, prim little rules follower. She was born on her due date. But apparently it's like only like 5% chance or whatever they're actually born on their due date. So you might have the date like seared into your memory, but it probably won't actually be on that day.
Yeah.
Amazing dad advice that I'm sure you've already heard.
Yeah, my thing about that was that I was telling everyone that the baby was due on April the 10th, and in fact it's or April the 9th, so I was already a day out. So, guess what happens there? It doesn't really matter from that perspective.
You're just as likely to be right as the doctor was, so it's not really a big deal.
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of the facts of it. First up, we're going to get into some fun stories about your kids. Is there any, or your kid, I guess we'll say, is there any fun stories that you want to share? We obviously don't know what's happening with baby number 2 yet.
Not yet. The second kid hasn't done anything funny yet. Not very, real quiet, keeps to itself, the second child. But the thing about funny kid, like every parent, like usually they kind of think like everything their kid does is like sweet and hilarious. Like, oh, like little Johnny just, threw a rock at his uncle.
Smash the window.
Yeah, that was very, yeah, exactly. It's like you always think everything your kids do will like be funnier or like cooler than what other people do usually. Actual funny stories. Maybe I don't know if it's funny, but a really gross story. It doesn't involve poop or anything like that, thankfully. But almost a very gross story was my little Amelia was like playing in like a sliding door jam. So like like a sliding door is like kind of on a track, and when the door is closed, there's like a little like area where stuff can like get stuck, like leaves or what have you. And one day, my daughter was playing in there and found a petrified frog that I think had been in there for many, many, many months, and put it into her mouth. And we came over and had no idea what she was playing with. And then we discovered the petrified frog. So that was a great day of parenting.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. So maybe, if she ever goes to France, I'm sure she'll be looking forward to trying some of those frogs' legs.
Of course, that's a good point. Actually, yeah. There's people in my family who really like frog legs, so maybe she's just getting a jump on that. But yeah, one other quick funny story is she has this horse that makes a noise. Like you press its ear and it starts singing a song, and it's down in our basement, but the button tends to get stuck. So like really like terrifying hours, like sometimes like real late at night, I'll be the last one up. And all of a sudden this like malfunctioning horse will just start singing really loudly. And every single time it like scares the living daylights out of me. You'll have a similar experiences, I'm thinking, with talking or singing toys or whatever. There's lots of malfunctions, and it's never not terrifying. So
yeah, you're trying to calm down at the end of the day, try and get nice and relaxed. Then
yeah, he gets the blood pressure back up. Yeah,
really rockets it back up. I guess another question that I've been asking, asked on the last show, I'll be asking probably throughout the series is, what's the best thing for you about being a parent? Is it the frogs? Is it the frogs' legs?
I'm going to go with the cop-out answer about what's the best, in that it's as good as everyone makes it sound like it's going to be. Everyone talks about it like this life-changing, amazing thing. And that's because it is. You kind of, especially like right now, like our daughter, 21 months old, is like running around, like talking all the time, like and saying like not quite sentences, but like just speaking really well. And like my wife and I are both kind of having the phenomenon of like looking at her. Like every time you look at her, you like feel like that's like a miracle, basically. So yeah, that's definitely the best part about being a parent.
And obviously, I'm really looking at what I can find out from people, advice that I need to have as I, become a parent. And people are giving me advice that I think is very good. I think it'll be very valuable. And then there's advice coming my way that's not great. But I'm going to let you start off on the good side of things first. What is the best piece of advice you think you have for me getting ready for baby number one here?
Definitely say it's going to kind of undermine your entire podcast endeavor here, but it would be not to listen to anybody. Everybody was going to like tell you a million different things, but just everyone kind of figures it out their own way. And you'll figure it out your own way. And it doesn't really matter how your cousin Joan like puts her kid to sleep or whatever. Like you're just going to have to do what you guys are going to do, and you'll figure it out. And granted, so you are doing this podcast series, you'll probably hear like the same thing 5 or 6 times. That'll probably be some pretty good advice. So certainly be open to advice, but the most important thing is to like figure out just what works for you guys. And yeah. And of course, if you have a specific problem, then it's good to seek advice and stuff, obviously. But yeah, you don't feel pressure from like the way, like take good ideas, but don't ever feel pressure from like the way other people do things, because you guys do it differently or want to do it differently. That's completely okay. So you got to just figure out what works for you guys.
I think as well, that's a general life rule,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
The advice and take what you think the best is. But I think, when you've another human being to look after, that really ramps things up there. So.
Yeah, you got to do it. Yeah, when you're tasked with protecting someone else's life, you got to do. If you're not comfortable, they won't be comfortable. So do what's good for you, what makes you comfortable. So. And
help me out with another one here, Pat. You've given me now a nice piece of advice, something that I'm going to write down after the show, and I'm going to say, right, I'm going to keep that for when I'm moving forward here. But there's bad advice out there. I mentioned that coming my way as well. There's advice, oh, you should do this. If the baby does this, do this. And you're like, no, that'll probably make the child very, very sick or, very, very unhappy. So probably before parenthood or now in parenthood, what would you think is the worst piece of advice you've ever given? And you don't have to give out any names to keep it all confidential.
I'll say you'll get more bad advice than good advice, kind of in my experience. People just will tell you crazy off the wall things. Nothing really specific, but what I would say was bad advice was before our first child was born, people would just say stuff, a lot of times half kidding, but not always kidding, oh, your life's over, you're never gonna get to do anything fun again, you're never gonna
that's it, all over now,
nothing will be the same, and nothing is ever the same necessarily. But I was kind of stunned just by how normal it felt and seemed, and how quickly you get used to it. And it's all your choices. I feel some people sometimes use having kids. I feel it's an excuse to kind of withdraw from everything. But it's only been one kid for us. I'm sure it's harder with more. But it hasn't been a life ender for us. We're still getting to do the things we want to do, and things are different. But don't listen to people basically that make it sound like all of a sudden you're not going to have a life, quote unquote, because you still will. And it'll be much better because you'll have an amazing kid in it.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll, in maybe 15 years, we'll review this when Pat has 14 children on the go. Maybe you'll have a different perspective.
Oh, yeah, that one was especially wrong.
Yeah. Baby number 12 really put the pressure on.
Yes.
But on my father's side of my family, a monster size of family, his mother and father actually had 18 children. So that was I have no intention of going down that road. Have you any intentions to go that way?
Is that a true Irish family, by the way? 18 kids?
Well, I think that was the case back when, the Catholic side of things.
That's still the stereotype in America. I'm from an Irish Catholic family. And the stereotypes of Irish Catholic families in America is that you have 6 or 7 kids. And
there's a lot of larger families, but it goes back generations, the generation above me in terms of 40-year-old people now, it's 2 or 3 kids. Before that, definitely 7 to 10 to even 12. Wasn't all that out the ordinary. So pretty crazy. They were just growing whole football teams there.
No, seriously. Yeah. We're going to do, clearly at least 2. Taking it kid by kid, really. But I think in our ideal world, we'll have 3. Kind of like a never say never to 4. But if everything works out, 3 is kind of what we're shooting for.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you look at it, is it 1, is it 2? When you have that talk with your partner, trying to figure out where it goes, it's always an interesting one, trying to figure out. And then, of course, when you get there, I wonder, do people change their mind? So interesting. Yeah. Anyone that's out there that has 4, 5, 6, 7 kids, hit us up in the comments and let us know, how that decision came about. Did you have a set number? Was it 1? Was it 2? And then it went all the way up and you have 19 children now at this point in your life.
I was going to say, I had a quick story. Yeah, people have been known to change their mind. We're having 4 kids. And then after the second, okay, literally no way having another kid. This the other night, I was hanging out with some people, a lot of dads, actually. It was a very stereotypical dad poker night. And everyone was talking about how many kids they had or whatever. Because there was some people who hadn't really seen each other in a while. And there's one guy, just a neighbor, a guy I had never met, was talking about how he had 3 kids. And he said, you know what? 2 is a really good number. This is from a guy who already had 3, was extolling the virtues of just having 2.
I feel sorry for the kid who's baby number 3 or kid number 3. He's really going to be on the rough end of the stick there.
Parents are, apparently already kind of checking out on him. So thoughts and prayers to that kid.
He's like 18 months old and they've already.
Yeah.
So hopefully we don't do that, Pat. We're sticking to the good parenting side of things here. Hopefully we're not going down that. Maybe the worst pieces of advice might come from that guy at some point if we do that side of the show. But you mentioned, it doesn't end your life like some people would mention. It's all over. There's so much to come. But is there one thing from prior to having your first child, pre-parenthood? Is there anything that you miss out of that there perspective?
Really, the only one thing I found myself missing is that so my wife and I got married in 2014. We had Amelia, our kid, in 2016. And both those first 2 years of marriage, we took nice kind of long trips, and we're kind of traveling a lot. That's like the one thing that's changed is like traveling is much more difficult with kids. So we're not going to go on like a 10 or 12-day trip, anytime in the near future. Some people do travel with kids, but we've just kind of thought it'd be too difficult. And I was really enjoying, I hadn't gotten to do like a ton of traveling in my life really until we got married. So that was the one thing I felt like that's kind of changed, but
Yeah.
it's a small minor thing. So that's
Yeah.
like the one thing I felt like was like no workaround. You come up with problems. There's usually like a workaround of some sort. The traveling so far is like the one thing where I haven't really found like a workaround. So.
You just need the child to get older so it can be more independent.
No, we have already traveled twice with her, but like it was both very short, like domestic trips.
Yeah, we kind of done an opposite thing. We did a lot of traveling. We are fortunate to have done a lot of traveling. Spent a year in Australia. I remember doing an NFL podcast with you.
I was wondering if you were still there, actually.
No, all the way back now to Ireland again. Obviously, married since and everything. So we're really starting to settle down. But our last big trip was this year, and we kind of went all out. We were thinking about just going to New York. We usually go to America once a year, and we decided, no, let's go all out because we decided we'd go to Vegas. We done San Francisco. We done the Grand Canyon. So we done it all, kind of the whole west coast of America, and fitted it in a kind of crazy 2-week period because that there's something that you cannot do for pretty much the next 18 years if you don't do it.
Yeah, no, it is not. Yeah, so good thing you got it out of the way, though. Something you wanted to do.
Yeah,
so that's like the one thing I would say. Yeah, if you're having kids, like you got to get out of the way is the anything you like. You feel like you have to do right now. That traveling, get it done with because it's gonna be a while.
It's going to take a little while before there's any more of that happening, and of course, it takes a lot of money as well. So
yeah, that's true. The money, even if like you figure out how to do it, the family, the money is tighter once the kids start coming. So
yeah, I think that's something that I've already been told quite a few different times. The other thing you mentioned, the name Amelia, it's a very nice name, obviously, but was picking a name for your child something that was harder than you expected? We're kind of looking through that process at the minute. We don't know if it's a boy or a girl, and we're trying to have kind of a short list of names. But it is one that's it can be quite tough to narrow down.
Yeah, for some people it's really easy. Like for like 20 years, they've had a name. They know they're going to name a boy or a girl, or whatever. It was extremely difficult for us. We didn't have like any like family names we really wanted to use. We never really had a eureka moment. We're both very happy with Amelia, but like the day, so we knew we were having a girl. So it's not like we're dealing with both sexes, but literally like the morning we were driving to the hospital, to initiate launch sequence, we were kind of like, well, I guess we're going to name her Amelia. Like we didn't really know for sure. Just kind of, like I said, we just never had that eureka moment, so to speak. So, and the second child we have, we're not trying to think about it if we find out if it's a boy or a girl. That's later in February. But like we have like basically zero ideas. So if anyone has any ideas, I'm on Twitter at RotoPat. You can tweet it at me, and maybe we'll use it. So because we do not know what to name our second child.
Yeah, I've heard from people that Colm is a great name if you're like.
It's actually, especially like me, I'm like the American Irish guy. So
it would fit in. It'd probably go quite well with the Daugherty surname as well.
It really would. It really would. They would probably think I was like an Irish immigrant.
So no pressure now, but it's been interesting. You mentioned knowing the sex of the child, but when you don't know it, it makes it quite difficult to try and figure it out. And so that's what we've been trying to do.
Yeah, because it was hard enough to come to a consensus when we knew what the sex was going to be. So I can't imagine having like two consensus names, having to have a boy name and a girl name. So,
yeah. And then probably changing your mind completely.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
But looking back to a time when we were younger, when I was younger, when you were younger, when you were a child, Pat. I've kind of been letting the guests pick the questions. I send over a short list of questions. The guests send them back. But Pat, we're all probably big children at heart. But when you were a child, when you grew up, what did you want to be? Did you want to be a fantasy football analyst? Of course, obviously an awesome thing to be doing. But what was did you want to be a fireman, an astronaut? What was in there for you, Pat, when you were a child?
I did not want to be a fantasy football analyst specifically. I can never say the word specifically. But I did know, I maybe whether I knew it or not, I knew that I didn't want a quote unquote normal job. I spent like my whole childhood, I was like obsessed with everything cultural. I would like spend hours. I had like these notebooks full of like fake baseball players, like fake sports teams, fake bands, like fake movie studios. I was just drawn to all of that kind of thing. I would like come up with, I would like create all these things. And so whether like I said, I like knew it or not, I think from a very young age, I didn't want to be like a lawyer or a banker or a firefighter or whatever. I wanted to do something, like what I'm doing now, thankfully. So it worked out in that regard. So like I said, didn't want to do this specifically, but just kind of knew I wanted to do something, like a little different. So
living the dream. Living the dream.
Pretty much. I honestly pretty am. So yeah, I cannot complain. So
I guess it might have something to do with those books that you kept keeping all those stats and looking into your favorite baseball players or fake baseball players at the time. But had you a favorite memory from childhood when you look back that you think most fondly upon?
It's weird because my whole professional career, like I spend like all my time like ranking things, and but I know you don't really ever think of like your personal life in those terms. So when like you said, I got to choose this question. I don't really know why I chose.
Wait till you have a second child, and then you'll start, baby number one.
So my favorite memory, I didn't have any like specific. I can't say the word specific or specifically. But we used to do like these campouts all the time at my own house with my dad and brother. My mom would not participate, but like we would just like sleep on the living room floor a lot for whatever reason with my dad. My brother and I, we would like watch a movie and like basically like camp in our own house. And
pretty good.
I was like thinking of like random childhood memories that kind of stuck out because we did it like all the time. So that was kind of like our favorite thing growing up for a while. So
but that is the thing. Everyone's childhood's different, and those different things make it all very, very interesting. So, and I'm sure the reason I like to ask that question is because I'm pretty sure as you move forward now and your children get older, that's probably something that I think you'll probably try and do with them because it was one of your favorite things to do.
No, it's true. It really is true. So, yeah. So I'm gonna start camping out with Amelia. I think tonight I'm gonna make her go. We have just a wooden floor in our living room. So tonight I'm gonna make 21-month-old Amelia. Guess what? You're sleeping on the wooden floor. We're gonna have a camp out. Just like Daddy do growing up. And,
but this is so uncomfortable.
Like yeah, you're gonna like it.
Yeah. So I guess then children, Disney kind of falls into that. Cartoons fall into this category. Has Amelia dived in yet into Disney? Is that something that
she's not? Thankfully, we've ended up being pretty strict on like the TV and like screens. We've kind of succeeded, like kind of keeping her away from that so far. Maybe we'll reevaluate that sometime in the near future. But no, she does not have like a favorite movie or TV show yet. Because
that's an interesting thing that you pointed out. I have seen a lot of people saying about it's better to keep them away from screens at a young age because children stand in front of the screens for too long, too close to the TV is not good for their eyes. And then, of course, attention spans and so on. Is that something that you looked into? Was that a conscious decision you just made?
It was a conscious decision. And, to me, it's like basically like the biggest question like facing parents in our generation basically is like, what's the right? Because like we're not going to be able to keep Amelia away from phones or TV forever, not even much longer, like probably a year. It's not like we're going to be able to keep her away from it anymore. So I feel like that's like kind of like the biggest question like facing our generation is like, how do you strike the right balance? Because I mean, even now, like the rare times like she does get a hold of a phone or whatever, she's just like enraptured. And she like knows they have pictures of her. She's always obsessed with like seeing pictures of herself on her phones. And yeah, that's the thing we're still struggling with. We were doing a good job of kind of keeping her away from it right now, but like, when there comes a point where you can't just like keep her away from it forever, I don't know how we're going to find the right balance because, you don't want your kid staring at a phone or a screen all day. So, yeah, I don't know what we're going to do about that, actually.
Yeah, I think I was around 13 the first time I got a mobile phone. But if you look like with a lot of things, the age keeps dropping down and the children are getting younger and younger. But I think it is a very positive step I think you've taken. And I think that, I asked for your piece of advice earlier in the show. I think that is a piece of advice that I think is very, very interesting. I think I'll take that into account in a major way. So
I think we're kind of unofficially aiming for like when she turns 2, maybe we'll start letting her watch a little TV or something. But even then, I don't know.
Yeah, there probably is no reason for a child to be watching TV at that age. But I guess you touched a little bit on it as well when you talked about your family camping out. You're going to start that with your kids. But have you started any other family traditions yet? It's very early on, obviously. But is there anything in the Daugherty household? Any family?
It is early, but I guess I don't know if it counts as a tradition. But like Wednesdays, which is today, are kind of like daddy-daughter day. for us. Like I watch her. My wife is working half days right now, and we kind of have like a rotating cast of people take care of Amelia in the mornings, and Wednesdays and sometimes Fridays are my day. But every Wednesday, it's me and Amelia hanging out. We go play with her fake food a lot. That's been like her big thing lately. She's got this big collection of fake food, and we play with that, and we go pick up lunch. And so it's not really a tradition, but that's like the habit we've had lately.
What's your favorite fake food?
The favorite fake food is probably the little pasta things. She's got a lot of it. It has like an elaborate burger. It has a croissant. It has like eggs. It has all this stuff. It's all this little plastic fake food, and she's just completely in love with it.
And when you mentioned you pick up lunch, do you pick up real lunch or do you pick up more fake food?
We do. Thankfully, she does know the difference between the fake and the real too. She likes to like feed her fake food to like her other toys, kind of. But the real food, yeah, she understands what should be ingested and what should, more or less, she understands what should be ingested and what should not. So
yeah, that's a very positive.
Real smart kid.
She's off to a good start. That's a very positive side.
She knows not to swallow her fake food, so that's good.
If we can just keep her away now from eating the frogs, we'll be doing very well.
Said, she didn't actually ingest it, as she would have if we hadn't intervened. But yeah.
So obviously it's all going well in the Daugherty household with the one kid there, another kid on the way. But if you had one word to describe your family at this stage of the development, have you a singular word or maybe even one or two words that you think stand out best in terms of what you've got going on in the family?
It would definitely just be Amelia. It's very focused around her. Like I said, it doesn't end your life, but it certainly changes your life. And we are very, very Amelia focused. And she's definitely running the household, and just like thinking about her all day, like keeping her happy all day, keeping her fed, so on and so forth. And so that would be the word, is Amelia. That's what runs this household these days. So.
That's pretty cool. I wouldn't know, obviously at this stage, what I would think of calling something like that, but to have a one word stand out and to be the child's name is obviously good because it shows that the focus of the family is around her, and obviously that's great. But maybe you'll need two words the next time we have this conversation.
Yeah, I think I'm going to. Yeah, so Amelia and Josh McDaniels Daugherty.
Baby X.
Yeah, Baby X. Yeah.
But that's going to do it for today's edition of the show. It's been a lot of fun having Pat on. I mentioned at the start of it that obviously he is on one of the biggest football writing websites in the world. That is rotoworld.com. You can follow him on Twitter if you want to find out about the fantasy football life that he has got going on, as well as his family life. He's on Twitter at RotoPat. We all kind of live in that fantasy life, Pat. I think that's the way we like to keep it. We have a real life as well, and of course, hopefully this show will help do that for us and show it. So, Pat, obviously, thanks for jumping on the show and coming in to share your thoughts on what I can do as I try to learn my way along this path, and hopefully it is a good path and it helps me on the straight and narrow.
It will be, yeah. This is a unique thing you're getting to do here too. So, you've got like your audience, and now you're like I said, you're using it in an interesting way. It won't be just for you either. People get to listen and hear some different perspectives, and thought it was a really good idea. And like I said, don't listen to anything anyone says, but if you're going to listen to what they say, get it from the Dad Pod.
Yeah, so. And that's the perfect plug. I think I'll cut that out and just post that everywhere. But don't listen to what anyone else says except for Patrick Daugherty, who you can find.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I'm the only one worth listening to if we're going to be real. So.
And be sure and check him out, as I mentioned, on Twitter at RotoPat. You can follow me on Twitter at Overtime Ireland, and of course make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're watching this on YouTube. You can also subscribe to the podcast if you're listening to the podcast. I do urge you, if you're listening to the podcast and not checking it out on YouTube, to go and do that. I think it's a lot of fun watching in on the videos to see us interacting with each other. But until we're back with another show each and every Wednesday, be sure and check out the feed, and until then, have a good one.